Millions were swallowed by a system so vast that by 1945, it included more than 44,000 camps, prisons, and killing sites across Europe. A machinery built not by monsters from myth, but by human beings following orders. What kind of world creates a place where starvation, cruelty, and death become routine? And what does life look like on the inside of such a system? Join me as we uncover one of the darkest human-made landscapes in history, a place designed not just to kill bodies, but to break the human spirit itself. From the early 1930s until the fall of Nazi Germany, the concentration camp network evolved from small detention centers into an industrialized system of terror. It reshaped the lives and ended the lives of millions. Today, we step inside that system to understand what prisoners saw, endured, and fought against. This is not fiction. This is documented truth. From the early 1930s to the end of the Second World War, Nazi Germany constructed a vast machinery of imprisonment, forced labor, and mass murder. It began with small detention centers for political opponents and evolved into a continent-wide system of concentration camps, transit camps, labor camps, and extermination centers. By 1945, more than 44,000 sites formed a network designed to exploit, dehumanize, and ultimately eradicate millions of people: Jews, political prisoners, Roma, disabled individuals, LGBTQ+ people, Soviet prisoners of war, captured resistance fighters, and countless civilians were caught in its grip. Life inside these camps was defined by starvation, brutality, psychological destruction, and an industrialized approach to death. For most victims, their path into this system began on a railway platform, swept from their homes during mass roundups. Families were herded toward trains at gunpoint. Deportations were carried out with precise planning. Entire communities were loaded into sealed cattle cars, 50, 80, sometimes 100 people in a single wagon. There was no ventilation, no water, and no sanitation. Darkness swallowed the interior once the doors slammed shut. As the train moved, people were thrown against one another. Children cried for water. Elderly passengers collapsed, and the sick lay helplessly on the wooden floors. These journeys could stretch for hundreds of kilometers and last several days. Some never reached their destination alive. When the train doors finally opened, the world outside was filled with noise, dogs barking, guards shouting in German, and the crackle of rifle butts on metal. Prisoners stepped onto the ramp uncertain of where they were, surrounded by barbed wire, bright floodlights, and the overwhelming presence of armed SS officers. Any sense of confusion was quickly replaced with terror as families were separated with brutal speed. Men were pushed into one line, women and children into another. Those who tried to hold on to loved ones were beaten or dragged away. The next moments determined life or death. SS doctors conducted what they called selection, a rapid sorting process. People who appeared healthy enough to work were directed to one side. Those deemed unfit, the elderly, the disabled, pregnant women, mothers with young children, and most teenagers were sent directly toward the gas chambers. Survivors later recalled that they did not know, in those first moments, that they were seeing their families for the last time. Primo Levi, an Italian Jewish survivor, wrote that the shock of separation was a blow from which the mind never fully recovers. For those selected for labor, the process of dehumanization continued immediately. Forced into disinfection halls, prisoners were ordered to strip naked. Their hair was shaved. Their documents and belongings were confiscated. Clothing was replaced with striped uniforms or ragged garments from previous prisoners who had already died. Each person was assigned a number that replaced their name. In Auschwitz, this number was tattooed onto the forearm, a permanent symbol of the system's intent to erase individuality. The transition from civilian life to camp existence took less than an hour. From that point forward, each day followed a rhythm of exhaustion and terror. Before sunrise, prisoners were driven from their bunks for roll call, known as apple. They stood in rows for long periods, often in freezing temperatures. Snow, rain, or oppressive heat made no difference. The SS demanded absolute silence and stillness. If a prisoner fainted, they were punished. If someone went missing, the entire group could be forced to stand for hours until the person was found dead or alive. This ritual was a deliberate act of control and intimidation. Food was insufficient by design. A typical day's ration included a small piece of bread, often moldy, and a bowl of thin soup containing little more than hot water and scraps of vegetables. Sometimes, a cup of bitter coffee substitute was added. These rations provided far fewer calories than required for survival, especially given the physically demanding labor imposed on prisoners. Starvation was constant. People grew weak. Their bodies consumed their own muscle, and infections spread rapidly among the malnourished. Living conditions offered no relief. Barracks were overcrowded, poorly built, and lacked heating. Hundreds of prisoners shared spaces meant for a fraction of that number. The air was thick with sweat, illness, and the stench of unwashed bodies. Lice were everywhere, infecting bed straw, clothing, and skin. Typhus, dysentery, and tuberculosis moved through camps with devastating speed. Sick prisoners were often sent to separate barracks known as infirmaries. But these were not places of healing. Most lacked medicines. Many were merely holding areas for those expected to die. Forced labor consumed each day. Prisoners worked in quarries, factories, mines, and construction projects that supported the Nazi war effort. In Auschwitz, the IG Farben chemical complex employed tens of thousands of Jewish prisoners under deadly conditions. In Mauthausen, quarry workers carried heavy granite blocks up steep staircases known as the Stairs of Death. In Dora mit Elba, prisoners built Vita rockets deep underground, suffocating in tunnels filled with dust and fumes. Accidents were frequent, and bodies were removed daily. Labor was calibrated not to sustain life, but to extract as much utility as possible before prisoners succumbed to exhaustion or starvation. Violence was not random. It was institutional. Guards beat prisoners without hesitation. Punishments included flogging, hanging, or forcing people to stand motionless for entire nights. Many camps had torture facilities where interrogations were conducted. Prisoner functionaries, known as captors, were assigned to supervise others and often resorted to brutality to maintain their positions. The system was designed to break down trust and force prisoners into a struggle for survival where cooperation became dangerous, yet essential. In some camps, cruelty extended into Nazi medical experimentation. Prisoners were subjected to sterilization procedures, exposure to extreme cold, forced infection with diseases, and surgeries without anesthesia. Children, especially twins, were singled out for experiments intended to support racial theories. Many did not survive. Those who did were left with permanent injuries. Yet even amid the brutality, acts of humanity and resistance persisted. Prisoners formed secret networks to keep one another alive. They shared food, exchanged information, and helped hide those who were weak during selections. Spiritual and cultural resistance took place through whispered prayers, improvised ceremonies, and the preservation of poems and songs. Educated prisoners taught children in secret. Artists sketched life inside the camps, creating hidden testimonies that later became critical historical evidence. Armed resistance also emerged. In Treblinka and Sobibor, prisoners launched organized uprisings, killing guards and attempting mass escapes. In Auschwitz, the Sunderkom and Ando prisoners forced to work in the crematoria smuggled gunpowder from a munitions factory and blew up one of the crematorium buildings. Though many were killed after the revolt, their actions remain remarkable examples of defiance carried out in the heart of the genocide. When Allied forces reached the camps in 1945, what they found defied imagination. At Bergen-Belsen, British troops discovered thousands of unburied corpses scattered across the grounds in Tenzo, thousands of starving survivors too weak to stand. At Buchenwald, American troops entered a camp filled with skeletal prisoners and the remnants of a once vast slave labor system. Soviet soldiers who liberated Auschwitz found warehouses filled with shoes, hair, suitcases, and human ashes, the material evidence of mass murder. These scenes were captured in photographs and film footage that shocked the world and revealed the full scale of Nazi atrocities. Liberation marked the end of imprisonment, but not the end of suffering. Many survivors had lost their entire families. Some were too weak to walk. Diseases continued to spread even after the camps were freed. The emotional trauma endured for decades. Yet survivors rebuilt their lives, raised families, and shared their testimony so that the world would never forget. The history of the concentration camps stands as one of the clearest warnings in human history. It demonstrates how prejudice, propaganda, and unchecked power can lead to mass violence. It shows how ordinary systems, transport networks, industries, administrative offices can be turned toward extraordinary evil. And it reminds us that the defense of human dignity is never guaranteed. It requires vigilance and an unwavering commitment to truth. The voices of survivors, the documents preserved by prisoners, the photographs taken by liberators, and the memorials that stand today ensure that this history endures. Their message remains urgent. The lessons of the camps must be remembered, taught, and understood. Forgetting them would be the first step toward allowing such darkness to rise again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe,